So yeah, let's go to slide 2, and I'll let Bob do one slide, and then I'll take it over from there.
So what is customer experience management? Because that's what we basically do at TCELab. And CEM, what it's called, is just a process of understanding and managing your customers' interactions with and perceptions of your brand and company. Now, in the old days, back in the CRM days, we talked about all these data sources with customer feedback and getting some value from that, but that never materialized. So what companies typically do nowadays is just look at their survey data to understand everything about their customer. So what's happening in some of the more advanced, mature CEM programs is that companies are now beginning to merge all these disparate data sources together for feedback to draw greater and more recognition. Longer.
Yeah, and that's good. And I can tell you guys the amount of effort that Bob has put into crafting this specific statement, and he'll fight to the death on this statement. But what he said is true. I used to do a lot of surveys in my software businesses, and we'd do a survey and we'd look at the data, and then we'd go, that's interesting, and most of it we throw away, and we get a couple nuggets out of it, because it's always better to do surveys than not. But we weren't really being intelligent with the data in terms of doing correlations or linkage analysis against the operational data that we had. And boy, once I started, I met Bob 7 years ago, and the first time I worked with him on one of these things, my eyes just popped wide open. And I've been doing this for a long time. I was at Intuit in the U.S. For 7 years, and we used NPS, Net Promoter Score. What we've got at TCELab is heads and shoulders above all that stuff. But let's go to page 3, because I really wanted to set this up for you guys in terms of why do CEOs even care about this? Because we get this a lot. Can you prove that CEM works? And at a gut feel, I know that getting customer feedback in and getting feedback from customers is better than not. Right? Yeah, an ambulance. Getting customer feedback is better than not getting customer feedback. But the real question becomes, what does it truly mean? So this data that was in this Gartner's 2012, Forrester survey, did an analysis of stock performance of CX leaders and CX laggards. That's what we call them. And so basically, the guys that are leading in CEX, VOC, they do customer service, they do correlations, predictive analytics, etc. They are 43% stock performance versus the guys that aren't doing it, which is minus 33% growth against the S&P index of 14.5%. So taking on that data level and just looking at it on a sort of macroeconomic index. It just stares blankly in your face that it's obviously the thing that's driving some good insights into business growth. Any questions on that data?
No, that's fine. I assume this would be very important today as you talk to clients on the value proposition.
Well, it totally is, and we've got our first case study for ourselves for a customer we did last summer. That's that Kashoo, and we're going to get into those guys later on. And that's a very specific example. Okay. And there's a lot of things that has to happen once you get customer insights. You have to execute them, and you have to build a company culture around customers. And there's things you have to do to tactically execute on it. But it does start with customer insight for sure. And so let's go on to the next slide then. So that's why the CEO is excited. But why is TCELab and secondarily sales affiliates and anybody that's going to be selling our services be excited? Well, I mean, there's money in them there hills. When we look at the 3 industries that we're kind of at the cross section at, which is the big data industry, the customer experience management industry, and then the business analytics software industry, they all have staggering amounts of growth in the next kind of 5 to 6 years. The big data industry, there's a slice of data in there that I'm going to show you on the next slide. But if you look at the CEM industry, and all of this stuff is being driven off the fact that companies want this stuff. So these projections don't happen because people wish this growth is going to occur. They happen because there's, you know, market indicators, and the market indicators we just saw in the last slide. The interesting stat that I came up with around the business analytics software industry is that the growth year over year in North America was a little less than they projected previously, at 8.7% year over year growth, but in Asia Pacific the adoption was 13.4% more. And so I think that just kind of continues to confirm, you know, that Asia Pacific is sort of you know, ramping up to embrace all of this technology and these processes. Next slide, we've got so, you know, big data means a lot of different things. When you really look at how it breaks down, we are in the big data application, analytical, and transactional software space, no question about it. There's also, I think this might be important for you guys, the big data professional services revenue that's right above that. And I think that's all about implementing big data inside your organizations, installing Hadoop servers, and all those kinds of things. So there's an opportunity there as well, which TCELab isn't going to take advantage of, but I think locally you guys might think about that. But in the transactional, analytic and transactional software space, you know, it's growing from about $500,000 this year to, or sorry, $500 million this year to $7 billion in 2017, and that's, you know, that's where we're going to get our money from, right out of there. So, yeah, so I hope that probably had some context. CEOs want it, and we're still at the very early stages of a lot of this predictive analytics stuff and this data understanding. And they talk about the three V's of big data, which is velocity, variety, and volume, and then we add the fourth V, which is veracity, around the truthfulness of the data and the insights that you can trust from the data. That's what we're about, the fourth V of data. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Bobby for the next slide. And so now we want to take you into kind of the overview of what does a customer experience management program actually look like, and what are the components, and what should customers be looking for. To an extent, and keeping in mind that the first step of a customer experience management program is to do a survey and to look at some data. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do over time to embrace CEM, and that's what Bob will get into. Go ahead, Bob.
Right. Thanks, Stephen. So the CEM program components, this model was developed based on research I did about probably 4 or 5 years ago to try to understand what are some best practices that actually drive success of a program. And by success, I mean it drives customer loyalty up. And what I found was that you can basically break down a program into these 6 components. And I structured them in a way that kind of makes sense in reality. So at the very top, you need to have the top executive support through vision and value and establishing the right kind of culture. Down below that is basically the guidelines and rules by which this program is governed. You know, you need to understand who's going to use the data, how the data will be used, and who's going to use it. And the step below is more about integrating your customer feedback into all your business processes. And by that, I mean actually integrating your data with your feedback data with other business data, your operation, your revenue data, and perhaps some employee data. And the 3 pieces down below are more kind of day-to-day things you need to do to support those 3 things above. And the method is the method by which you collect your information and the kinds of things you collect and measure about your customers. Next is reporting is how you report the information back to the stakeholders of the company. And we found that if those companies that share more of their data, more of their processes, more about the program itself, are more successful than those companies who don't do that. And finally, the last piece is about research. So we find that companies who do this in-depth research, integrating all their business data and uncovering deeper insights, those businesses are much more successful than those businesses who just look at their data in silo form, just as disparate data silos. So I like to use this as a very good overview to talk about your program in a company and what you need to do as a company to ensure the success of your CEM program overall.
Bob, I got a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I understand this process, and I think it's the right way to go. What happens if there is two aspects within the client? One wants to understand the internal measuring of the staff and what they are doing towards customer experience, and one wants to do the external measurements. Can you actually do both of them concurrently, or should you break up the methodology and address them separate?
No, I think you can do them concurrently, but the value of each increases when they're kind of merged together or integrated together in one holistic approach.
Okay, so when you actually then do the presentation back to the CEO or CXO, you're giving it to them as a total presentation of both aspects.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry, the reason I ask is we got some guys who actually do some HR stuff, so they were looking at how with the impact of the staff on customer experience. And of course, we got some guys who come in from the marketing side. That's why I just wanted to ask that question.
Sure, no problem. Understood.
Okay, sorry.
The next slide, is that you, Stephen?
Yeah. No, you go ahead, Bob.
Okay, so like I said before, typically back in the old days, when you talk about a CEM program or a customer feedback program, companies typically only looked at that one silo, a customer feedback silo. And they managed that data, they understood what and so forth, and that was the extent of their program. But as companies matured and the market matured, businesses now want to integrate all those other data, customer feedback, in order to get deeper insights. So on one hand, you may want to understand what kind of operational factors, like call wait time, first call resolution, what kinds of factors of that call center is actually impacting transactional satisfaction. And also, for example, like you were saying earlier, Sam, about, you know, some companies just want to understand what the employees do and how that impacts customer loyalty and customer satisfaction. But nowadays with technology, we can actually quantify the impact of employee satisfaction on customer sat. So on the back end, we can link up the financial data to understand if customer loyalty scores go up 1 percentage point, what does that translate into financial revenue gains for the company? And by integrating all these data, we can now start answering bigger questions about the consequences and causes of customer satisfaction and loyalty. So this I like is a good holistic of how we look at your business data, because there is value in looking at individual data silos, but I think the value of the data increases when you integrate them all together and start seeing the correlations among these different data metrics.
Yeah. So for example, you know, with Kashoo, we did stuff like, you know, are the people using the iPad that are using a specific area of the program, are they any more happier or satisfied than users of the browser app? And are the people that are logging on once a month happier than the guys that are logging on twice a day? And so by correlating all that stuff, you kind of can really bring it back. And this is what I love about it. You can really bring it back down to tactical execution, because you can go, hey, that means that we really need to focus on just that razor thin piece of the business.
Okay. And you can really focus down to a particular level of the function.
Exactly.
Yep. It all depends on the data set that you have, because once you have the data, you can do anything with it. You can do any types of correlations, et cetera. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Next slide, Bob.
Okay, so I was talking earlier about, you know, understanding these various linkages. And this is basically like the kind of model of how you look at your data. So you want to understand the impact of operational metrics on the left-hand side, impacts transactional stat, and then down the chain, you understand ultimately how that impacts financial business metrics. So by linking up these disparate data sources, what I call linkage analysis, you can essentially ask and answer bigger questions about your customers. For example, like what's the dollar value of improving customer satisfaction and loyalty? I mean, I think as a CEO, they want to know before they invest money, you know, like that slide Stephen showed, like what's the impact of the CEM program? Number two, which operational metrics have the biggest impact on customer sat and loyalty? So in call centers, you may have, you know, hundreds of metrics that you're managing and monitoring, but I think it would behoove you to know which of these metrics actually has an impact on satisfying your customers. And once you identify that, you can manage to the reduced set of metrics and manage those. It makes the business much more efficient and more effective in managing customer relationships. And finally, we can look at, you know, which employer partner factors have the biggest impact on customer sat and loyalty. I did a study a few years ago at Siebel. They wanted to understand, does employee training have an impact on customer sat? By merging employee training data with customer sat data, we were able to verify that, yeah, employees who take more online training courses actually have customers who are more satisfied with their performance than employees who take fewer training courses. And based on the results, we can identify at what point is there actually too much training where the ROI decreases. So it makes it run the business more efficiently.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and that's the stuff I get super excited about, because, you know, directionally, if you train people, your customers will be happier. That makes sense to me. But it's always a question of how much training do you do? When do you stop? How much response time do you give? Is it 30 seconds? Is it important to answer a call immediately? And by correlating those against customer satisfaction, you know how much to invest in those areas.
Exactly.
Sorry, I'm getting excited. Go ahead.
Next slide. So this is a model, just kind of a heuristic you can use, and what kinds of linkages are available. So when I say you link up your customer sat data with operational, it's only certain kinds of sat data that you want to link up with operational metrics, and that's transaction. So if you look at the columns represent the different kinds of feedback you get. Relationship survey that's done perhaps on an annual basis. Transactional survey is another approach where you measure satisfaction by the specific interaction a customer had with you, whether it be sales, service, or the product. And the final column is about social media, like how do you measure sentiment and how do you link up that with other data. And the rows represent the various kinds of other business silos, business data silos. The first row is financial. So in the financial row, you see that we don't link up transactional data with financial data because it's meaningless. It doesn't make it doesn't make logical sense to do that. So in the operational, you link up only with transaction and social media. And constituency data, which includes employee and partner, you can link that up with any kind of data. And the linkage you do with your data depends on the question you're trying to answer. So if you're trying to answer the question, how does customer loyalty impact our financial results, then you want to look at the upper left quadrant or the upper right quadrant as a method of approach of linking those data sets. If you want to understand how does operational metrics impact transaction satisfaction, you do that in the middle cell and the right cell, middle right cell. So again, it just depends. When I say linkage analysis, it's a very general term, but you have to understand the kinds of questions you're answering and the kind of answers you want from the data. In fact, I was talking to this consultant, and this big data guy, and he said that, and I agree with him, that we're linking up disparate data sources trying to find insight. 70% of that is just, and 30% is just doing the analytics to find those insights. So the big chunk of the work is just organizing your data in the right way in order to find those insights that you want. So this whole idea that to be, you know, to the masses, everybody can do it, I think that's false. It's untrue. It takes some critical thinking.
So, Bob, how critical are your questions?
Yes.
I said, how critical are the questions that you set? and how do you guys get the importance of the questions across to the customers?
The questions in the survey, or
yes,
or the questions you want? Well, that's a whole separate thing. Besides that's a whole separate issue beyond the linkage of the data. And I've done research on the questions you want to ask in a survey, and we can talk about that in a discussion. I can send you some links to some blog posts I've done.
Okay. I just wanted to know whether it actually relates the importance of the questions or the data that you get out of the questions would probably have something to do with the linkage, but you're saying that it might not do that. Okay, that's fine.
Correct. Next slide.
An interesting world.
Yeah, and that, by the way, we have a product that's specifically built for us to go in and review customers' questions. It's a service that we provide. So
okay, good.
If we do nothing else with the company, and somebody just wants to know, is our stuff set up correctly? We call that our TCE audit service. Good,
because I think a lot of the guys want to probably you guys walk them through a scenario. You know, how do you get involved with a client, and what are the things that is done,
yep.
Because that's important to them as well, so they can see how the time it takes and what they need to do.
Yeah, for sure. And we can speak. I don't have anything in that deck on the process, but I certainly that CRD.
Yeah, no, we can do it in the general chat. Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I'll let you carry on and finish.
For sure. Yeah, next slide there, Bobby.
Sure. So this slide kind of shows you the three different ways a business can grow. You have these business programs that, marketing, sales, and service, and those impact three kinds of loyalty behaviors. One is retention, how long a customer stays with you, or if they renew their contract with you. Two is advocacy, whether or not you can acquire newer customers. And three is kind of I call it purchasing behavior, but it's more about expanding the relationship with a given customer, making your customers buy more from you and expand the usage of your products throughout their company. And the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, really addresses only number two in a very unreliable way, mind you. It measures about how to grow your company through new customers, whereas retention and purchasing behaviors are about growing your company through existing customers. And our rapid loyalty approach helps companies identify, ways that they can actually improve growth through existing customers. And the NPS does. So I have a little graph on the lower right that kind of, red is bad, green is good, to show you, the benefits of the rapid loyalty approach over the NPS approach. And I think this is a really good selling point, I think, to show that we know what we're doing. It's based in science and reality, and it's not based on hype and hyperbole.
Yeah, and we speak to we speak to that a little bit on the third page of that CRD info pricing sheet thing. But Bob's also got several other articles around rapid versus NPS, and this was actually. Again, we use an NPS, and I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Net Promoter Score or not, but it's a recommendation. It's an advocacy. So basically, our advocacy and what Net Promoter does is more or less the same question. It measures recommendation, but the way Net Promoter calculates it is just kind of a funky math thing that's not really required, and certainly creates all the ambiguity around really what NPS scores mean. But we used it into it, and I honestly did not get it. I liked it from the perspective of if I measured it once and I measured it again 3 months later, and if it goes up, then my boss is going to be happy. I got that part. But I did not get the part on how to relate it to tactical execution in a very intelligent way, because it still didn't help me focus. So oftentimes, when we deal with companies that have been using NPS previously, we'll also give them their NPS score so they can continue with that, my boss is going to be happy 3 months later, but then we'll also do it using the rapid methodology. Is that fair enough to say, Bob?
Exactly. And you might think of a rapid loyalty approach as just a company trying to augment what the NPS tells you. So the NPS, the recommended question itself is not a bad question, but just relying solely on that is an approach that's not very comprehensible.
Yep. And the two reasons it's not comprehensible because the data the number itself is confusing. And two, you're missing 2/3 of the ways you can make money at your business. So
right.
That one's pretty. So interestingly, so Rapid is one of our pieces of secret sauce. That's part of the magic. It's how it's one of the things that differentiates us for sure. If we want to go to the next slide. This is basically our corporate vision. This is what we do. And the other secret sauce that we have is the way we approach predictive analytics and produce key driver charts and linkage analysis. So Linkage so Rapid's our secret sauce, and the way we approach our predictive analytics is secret sauce as well. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, okay, that's good. So CRD, that's what we've got to go and push.
Yeah. We're going to go to the next page. So what do we have to offer clients? So we have basically three things that we offer. One is the CRD Voice of Customer Survey, which I'm 100% interested in selling that. The ERD, which is the Employee Relationship Diagnostic and Partner Relationship Diagnostic, we can do those, but we always think of them as an extension, at least I do, as an extension to the CRD. So if you've got your customer experience stuff down and you're doing good customer feedback, and now it's time to expand your relationship diagnostics, that's when that stuff comes into place. But I wouldn't, we've been through this before, Sam, but I wouldn't lead
sure.
either of those products for sure.
So,
and then
just for the case of the guy, sorry, Stephen, because I know there's a couple of guys who are in the HR play, and I just want to make sure that we don't, they might not feel that they want to go around and do all of the CRD stuff, but, is there elements in ERD that they can utilize without the CRD?
I mean, there absolutely is, and an ERD.
And maybe we can discuss that with them on a need-by basis. I just want to make sure that we have that window to discuss it. That's all.
We do, and there have been ERDs run, but I tell you, the thing that really kind of got me going on that last thing was the amount of work we would have to do to do that proposal.
Oh no, well Shane will tell you, because Shane and I were involved in that tender. And I suppose we sat down and we've had many meetings, many coffee meetings over this, and Shane would tell you, we knew that it was going to be out of our league, but we wanted to know whether it would enter us into the other side of the survey with the energy company, right? But when we saw that, look, it was just, I think it was a tick in their box. It's something they had to do before the change of governments and all of that, and they were trying to get their budgets all sorted out for the next 2 years, and this was one way for them to go and do that. And actually, the inside info we received is, I don't think they even knew what they wanted to bloody do, which would have been a nightmare for whoever wins the tender. So that's, you can, I know you're laughing at the background because you've been down that track yourself before, right? So we were just seen it as probably, can we get our umbrella out there quickly, and is this a nice big opportunity that would get us out there? But we also realized it would do us more damage than good, right? So we didn't even bother entering in the tender. So, but what we do have is, sorry, if I could just finish the point I was trying to, what we do have is we have elements in IT companies today, SaaS companies, channel partner companies, who really want to measure the key performers of their staff. And in fact, I think Bob was saying it the other day, you guys came up with a survey that says, if I train these guys better or supply them more training, they're performing better, they stay with me longer. So they're looking at the staff member of sticking around just like a customer. And I know that John D and these guys are working on these models, and this is the angle that we're looking at doing some of that. So if ERD or a combination of CRD and ERD does that for them, I think we might have some appeal to them. If it's not going to do that, it's probably good to tell them that now, so they could go and look at other elements that they need to look at. So that's the angle. But most of the guys will focus on CRD because we're coming from the marketing angle, the digital marketing, the customer retention. So that will always happen anyway. Right.
And the way you described that scenario on the ERD, CRD thing, yeah, we totally entertain that conversation. That's
okay,
a good
that's
thing.
fine. Then at least then I know that if John has some opportunities, we can discuss those with him.
Yeah.
Good.
For sure. And then we have our two products, the TCE Audit and the TCE Linkage. Now, TCE Audit is what I said before. Someone's running surveys already, but they just need to know, are my questions in the right order? Are they organized correctly? Can I do something else with the data? You know, and basically that's Bob going in and having a look at it, Bob or one of our associates. And and then the TCE linkage side of things is the other side. They've got data in hand and they want to get some help running some correlations and doing some stuff with the data that they didn't think, or they're not quite sure they got everything out of the data that they wanted to get out of.
Okay.
So that's the other side of it. Yeah. And then thirdly, and this is a relatively new thing, but co-sponsoring market research papers. We did actually, Bob and I did a study for the mobile wireless industry a couple of years back, and it was looking at loyalty in that case it was loyalty for wireless providers globally, and so industry-wide type market research we're also interested in dealing as well.
So you could help China Telecom to tell them how to keep their clients.
Well, we could do that with a CRD. What the research paper was is that we actually, geez, I forget how many carriers were actually in the but let's say we got data on 300 different carriers, and we were able to compare them against each other for their loyalty statistics.
So we knew
so we could pick the top wireless provider in the whole world based on their loyalty.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah, and so some companies, you know, if they're a growing company, they want to be known as the leader in a certain space, and they might. And one way to do that is to publish research. So they can partner with us. So we can design a study, publish it, present the results, blog about it, and kind of demonstrate through inbound marketing that they are the leader in this space because they think about these things and they do research to support their ideas. Their ideas. Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we do, and I did want to speak just briefly to how we do it because we've developed this thing that we call the customer loyalty as a platform, and it's funny, we've been at this for, I don't know, about a year and a half, 2 years doing this, and we still have a long ways to go to be everything that we want it to be, but we have quite a bit of stuff in place already. So we can take existing big data from a whole bunch of different sources, and we basically pull all that together. Depending on, and we identify that first. It's not the type of system where you just dump huge big data sets into it and then it goes off and does a bunch of trend analysis. This is, we use a very formalized structure to go, okay, these are the pieces of data that we need, but this is where we need them from. And then we also, as you know, we have a survey engine, and so we run surveys, and they're applicable on browsers, tablets, and mobile. We also have email management, so it's really meant to kind of help people, like Kashoo, for example. They gave us their customer set, the big data set, and then we went off and we ran all their stuff. We did the predictive analytics and the correlations, link analysis, and then we gave them back a report. And that's all happens inside our loyalty platform, which doesn't, when someone approaches us, and we have a partner in the UK called ClickTools, and they do surveys for they're a survey engine for Salesforce customers, and so for those customers we don't need to do surveys for them, and we also don't need to manage their emails, but they do need the other parts. They need the TCE audit part and the TCE linkage part, and they'll get all the data in, but they won't know how to correlate it or run reports, and so that's kind of our play with those guys. So We don't. It's funny. I don't like to think of us as a survey company, although it's inherent in what we do. So that's why we call it.
So you guys, so just to walk through some of the guys, so the guys can get a feel of things. In the States, when you guys started doing this, and I know you all have had corporate backgrounds and done a lot of consulting between getting together and doing all of this, but let's take a couple of, take a SAAS for an example. You had a SAAS. What was the approach? How did you get there? What was the pain point that the guys, and did you hit it at the CEO level, or did you go at the marketing level? Where would the guys go and look at these things, and who they should be talking to?
It's interesting. We do get interest from the CIOs because the information guys, or even the CTOs, because the information guys are the guys that are, you got to handle this big data problem. And then they realize, I can install servers and I can, give them access to it, but it doesn't mean anything to anybody. So that's when you're coming from the IT side of things. That's kind of how those guys get to us. But the CMOs, we see our bigger market for these guys as the CMOs and the VOC professionals inside organizations. And typically,
so you're coming from the
Right.
And go ahead, Bob.
So Sam, so some of the people I interact with in companies are sometimes at the senior VP level, sometimes at the director level, sometimes at the manager level. But ultimately, it all goes up to the senior VP who runs the entire department or marketing space or tech support. But I do interact with people, and people have approached me who are simply director levels or below, and just they want to know for them. And then they send that information up top, and then that's how I get introduced to the senior VPs of companies.
So you sound like you could come in with a KPI is resident. So if someone has a KPI, customer experience level, and needs to improve that, and they could be the service VP or wherever, and it rolls out into that. Okay, so the questions you would really ask today for someone is, do you have a customer experience strategy? Would that be a leading question to find out where they are, or?
Perfect.
That's a perfect question to ask. Okay.
Yep.
And how long did you guys experience the process? Did it, when you get in here, you say someone comes in and says, "Come and help us." What do you actually do, and how long does it take you guys to do it?
Well, I don't have any hard data on that, but I typically find that really large companies, the sales process is really long. It could be months. For some smaller companies who I think they just know me because they've heard about me, it's a much faster process. I've got sales that happen in about a month.
Okay, so when you actually got the deal and the guy says, "Come and help," what's your process, and how long do you take? Is my question.
Right.
Well, if they come asking for help, I write a proposal. They have an RFP, so I write a proposal. And that's kind of a lot of work, but I do have some templates we can use that address specific problems. So if you need something like that, just let me know, and I'll shoot you off a copy of what I have, and you can use it for your specific needs.
That would be great, because, and also what would be the key elements into getting that proposal. So, like I said, if they don't have a CE strategy, what can we do to help them get all of that? Because I think that's the key thing is we're trying to get our heads around what are the best questions to ask to get the guys attracted, and then what are the best questions we need to ask to put a proposal together and make sure they got all the data. So you see what I'm saying? In that chain, there's actually a couple of things there, and I think after that, the sale motion thing is we get a proposal, they accept it, you guys then come and get involved. What's that piece look like, and what do you do from that end?
Right. Let me take over here.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy. The process for actually getting the sale, I always think about it as terms of when is their strategic meetings? When are you meeting as a team to discuss the next 6 months or 12 months of operation? Because that is the time that you need this data the most. And what we like to do is we like to get in front of the customer, or in front of them, and get it started anywhere between kind of 6 weeks to 3 months ahead of that date, so that we have time. And the process is actually, if you look on page 4 of that CRD handout, it's a 6-step process, and we can accelerate that if need be. But it's really we've got it all kind of laid out. So the remember, I actually sent you a CRD contract, I think.
I understand. I haven't shared that with the others, of course, but I just want. Right. But I just wanted to get on the call so they can understand that. I suppose because I understand, I know the process. You guys usually sit in front of the clients and work on the objective is one time. Second time, you would come back with the strategy of running the survey or the relationship analytics or whatever we're gonna do. And then the third time you see the client is to present. Am I correct? Is that, I know I'm shortening the thing, but you practically see the clients 3 times. Is that about right?
That's about right. Sometimes more, but the first time is to center everybody on what the process is and what the outcomes will be, and really to ask what the goals are of the company, right? With customer feedback, because we're gonna provide a bunch of stuff about what the goals are.
So that's the meeting you want with the project leader and the owner of the project and his team, correct?
Correct. Right. And then from those goals, then we take, okay, well, if that's the case, what data do we need to support getting to those goals? And so we look at what available data sets are, and then at that point we usually work with the database guys or the CMO guy, whoever's going to pull the data for us, right? And we get those data sets, including, and if we're doing the email lists, then at that point that's when we do the email and get the customer data as well. And then from that we then go into design mode. So we have a standardized set of questions. We work through Google Docs. So we see the questions, the customer sees the questions, and we go through them and we go, this is the standard set, but what else do we need to know based on what the goals are? And then we get sign off on that question set. Question set then gets programmed into the survey engine along with all the introductory emails, the landing pages. We put the branding in. Typically, we'll offer a free gift, like a free iPad or something if you complete the survey. Or I mean, you could win a free iPad, not get an iPad.
I understand.
I do that. And so then we get all that kind of collateral material done with the email invitation and such, and we get it to a beta stage, and that's kind of the last milestone. The client signs off on that stuff, and then we run the survey. And the length of time the survey is in market depends on really the kind of volume that we get back. And for bigger clients, if they have a huge client base, we can totally do this. We can, do a quarter of a client base, 1 quarter, do the next one the next quarter, or however they ever want to break it up. But
you can stagger it or whatever.
Yeah. So and we can. And that's also, we can also do it so there's just continuous data coming into an executive team as well. Like we could do monthly reports quite easily. But I do find that stuff is very much tailored towards that kind of annual or semi-annual strategic meeting.
Which comes up to my next question. Are you guys open for a client to come and say, I want to retain you for the year and I want to run 2 surveys or 3 surveys or whatever that we agree on that's real for them? Is that something that you would look at doing? Okay.
Yep, totally. If you look at, Sam, if you look at the back of that CRD, do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I can open it up on you.
Yeah, if you look at it, there's an option on the kind of the far right-hand side that, because basically running the second CRD just doesn't cost as much as the first one because we've got question sets.
Correct.
Right?
Because that's what I'm trying to get into now. Come in and do an annual deal with you and say, look, it's going to cost us X amount. And because I think a lot of us are in business where we have long-term relationships with our clients, right? So it just makes sense to come in and say, look, mate, add this onto your digital marketing element that we're doing, or add this onto your sales optimization stuff that we do with you, or whatever else that we're doing with you, and we'll offer 2 of these a year, and we'll come in and do it, and and here's whatever our cost is, and whatever, and that just makes more sense to do it that way. I think a lot of the guys would be appealed to do that. So
I kind of set the pricing up like this, so the kind of the really sweet spot is the builder level, and that's kind of our full meal deal, right? If you have a customer that bought one,
hey guys, by the way, these are U.S. prices, huh? The dollar's bloody gone down at the moment. It was nice when we started talking when the dollar was up, but now I'm crying, guys. You're 29 now.
It can be in whatever currency is the best currency. I'm all good with that.
Yeah, that's right. That's okay.
So if you sold a survey for $2 and then the guy comes back the next year and says he wants it again, well, he'll get 30% off that survey, off the next year's survey, right?
So we can come back and work out an annual tip per client where we do the second one at a 30 off or whatever.
Just move a little bit further down into the wiser category, and for $4 you can get 3 surveys. So that's instead of giving 30% off as subsequent surveys, we're giving 65%.
So there was exactly,
because we're getting in a hand
so
first, right?
Starts to look at or whatever it is.
Exactly, right? So we've got, we can do 3, the longer one is a 3-year contract, but if someone wanted to do 1 year with 3 surveys in it, that's the same price. It's the 3 surveys, right?
But on average, though, 2 surveys a year is suffice.
Would that
be a strong recommendation for you guys, or?
It depends on the size of the company, and it really depends on how quickly the company is going to react on the data that they're going to have in hand. And in my estimate, like with Kashoo, there's a company that they have 100,000 customers. The team's about, there's about 30 people on the team. And like there's no sense in doing 2 surveys for them because they literally could not do the insights on the second survey. So,
original airline that sells a lot of stuff online because of budget airline, whatever, and with their capacity and the way they move, they probably wouldn't be able to do justice to more than 2 surveys a year anyway.
Yep, this is very strategic thinking, this stuff. So it's true. Yep.
No, it's just that they would probably ask us for guidance on that. So that's important that we try to bring that value across and understand what's the best way to measure that.
Now, that being said, these are called relationship surveys. Vishal, sorry. Yes, Vishal. Vishal just texted me on another chat. Sorry, and I replied.
Okay.
We also have, so that's a relationship survey. There's also a thing called a transactional survey. And so if you're doing things where you just measure, like if someone, just called into a service organization and they want to get a survey on that person exiting that service call, that's a transactional survey. And we can do those we can do those as frequently as anybody would want to have that data. Okay. And that data is valid, almost on a daily basis. But it's not strategic. If you get my drift, you can't.
I understand, but that could work because we got a lot of guys here in Asia Pacific who actually use Asia Pacific for their call centers, right? Right. And they might want to measure what's that external call center doing to their business. And I've been approached by a lot of the guys doing the outsourcing, the PPO centers in the Philippines and in India and whatever, and saying, hey, Sam, if we could actually survey our own guys here and present that to external clients, can you guys do that? So if I'm a call center for Amex, could I do these transactional surveys and show Amex that I'm a good person or whatever?
Yeah. Especially if they're doing online stuff, Sam, our stuff, our stuff's all web and cloud-based, so we would
these will be online call centers. Yeah, we're not doing the phone stuff, mate. I'm not.
No.
I'm only doing the guys who actually do online support and calls, so.
Right.
Yeah, so. There's a lot of PPOs working online in the background, so.
And then once we get all the data back, and I've done surveys where I've gone out, you do your initial invitation and then you do a reminder, a week later, and then another reminder. It really depends on how much data you get in and whether you're comfortable with the insights that are coming in. But then once you get all the data in, then it's just a matter of running it through our analytics engine. So we do a number of things automatically, and then the last pass through the data is with Bob and I, and mostly Bob, I might add. who basically just gives it a second eye, and as well we make sure that whatever the goals were of the company that it started with, that we make sure that that's definitely in the analytics coming out. And then, as you stated, then the last thing to do is just to do the report outs, which is typically, you know, an hour, 2 or 3 with the team to go through all the insights and what it means for them and help them think it through. And depending on, you know, depending on how big the company is, I've often thought that, you know, initially we would run the result. If it's a bigger company, it would make sense to take kind of the CMO and the CEO aside, run the insights, figure out what really rings their bell, and then redo, and then kind of tailor that towards the bigger sort of executive suite team. But it all depends on the CEO style, frankly.
Well, this is an interesting area because we've got a lot of the affiliates sitting on the call probably do that themselves to the client. So would you be able to deliver the recommendation to the affiliate partner and let them go back to their client and address it whatever the way they're going to do it? And because that's where they add their value. A lot of them will add their value on implementing the recommendations. Yeah,
that's a great model. I would love that. And then if the affiliate needs to bring
otherwise, there's no value for them, to be honest. They don't want to be just sitting there looking like they're pretty guys organizing a meeting. They need to add some value, because a lot of them might not even come in and lead with whatever we're doing here. They will lead with the you know, end-to-end solution, and the end-to-end solution might have a different pricing model and different delivery model. It's just that we're part of what they do, right? So, and I think if we can deliver that to a model, I think that assures them to continue to do what they need to do and be the final piece to the recommendation to their client.
I love it. Yeah,
because I know that will appeal to all of them. Because even for me, even at advanced coaching, I was going to use certain elements and then put that into the delivery of the recommendations. So.
Right. Yep, that's I can totally see that model working. And if the affiliate wants to bring us in on a meeting to kind of and it depends on the affiliate and the customer they have, the relationship they have. But sometimes it's good to have kind of a third party authority come in and especially a guy like Bob who just comes in and, you know, basically says it's math. It can't be wrong. Yeah. It's math.
Exactly, it's a science. Come on.
I love it.
No, and in some cases, we might even, some of the affiliates might come to you guys and say, look, we want to sell Bob's expertise across here, or do something. Gives them that other element to work with you anyway. So as long as we let them have the final say and how to position it, I think that'll be ideal for them.
Yeah, I'd like to get through the next section because it's in this next little description that it really comes to light what we do specifically for SaaS companies, as a matter of fact, because that's you know when I so software as a service companies, right? Where retention is extremely important. Yeah. Retention is important to most companies. And if a traditional company is bleeding customers, yeah, retention is super important, but it's just really amplified in a SaaS software company. Yeah, so let's go to the next slide there, the Kashoo driver analysis case study. Thanks, Michelle. And and so as I mentioned, Kashoo posted 57% year-over-year growth since last summer's survey. And interestingly, the things that they report in their press release when they talked about this growth were the things that we pointed to them to in last summer's survey. So we just kind of wanted to show you how we approach that. Let's go to the next slide. Now this is a fairly dense slide, but it really speaks to sort of the web traffic sales funnel. So you have all these people coming into your funnel, coming to your website at the top. And those are all new customers, typically, right? And so new customers come to our website through advocacy and through marketing things. Once they become our customers, they can do one of two things. They can either continue to become our customers, and we can retain them, and they can continue to pay us more. Or we can, maybe next month, we figure out instead of getting $10 from that guy, we're going to figure out how to get him up to $12 or $13 by adding extra value or whatever. So, again, that goes back to those 3 ways that companies make money. So that's essentially the basic model of the SaaS sales funnel, and why. And again, retention is super important. We'll go to the next slide now. and I'm going to let Bob describe this.
Okay, next slide, please. So this is called a driver matrix, and it's essentially meat of our reporting process. So when you look at various customer touch points like product, service, support, marketing, and so forth, you want to know where you need to make those investment dollars have a big impact on improving loyalty. And you do that by looking at two things about each business attribute, whether it be product or service. You want to know how well you're doing in that area, and that's the x-axis down below. Performance is essentially the satisfaction rating that the clients give you on that dimension. You look at is how important is that attribute in driving loyalty, and that's the y-axis, the impact. So what's the impact of that attribute on various types of customer loyalty? So if you look at those two pieces of information, we can essentially, drop an attribute in one of these four to understand if it's an area we need to invest in, which is a key driver upper left. If it's a hidden driver, that means we're doing very well in that area, and it's very important to our customers. So we got to keep continuing doing well in that area, and so forth. So if you look at the next matrix, I think it'll come to life better. Next slide, please.
So, well, hang on for 1 second. I just wanted to add this to this. So when we do these driver charts, we do them for each loyalty dimension. So there's an overall satisfaction one, but there's also an advocacy chart, there's a retention chart, and there's a purchasing chart, because the different dimensions may have different impacts on the loyalty.
Right.
We also do,
for example, if you want to increase advocacy loyalty, different things compared to if you want to improve purchasing loyalty.
I see. Okay.
And so that.
So for this example, we see here that. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, for each of those key driver charts, sets of key driver charts, we also apply it to customer segments. So we can get a set of key driver charts for browser users, and we can get a set of key driver charts for iPad users, because the drivers of loyalty will be different depending on those operational, that big data, right? That's how it kind of comes together. Sorry, next slide. So basically what this report, what this driver chart tells me is that if this company wants to improve retention loyalty, they need to improve those three areas: report, the future product company direction, at least perceived by the customer, and the banking and bank reconciliation process. So those are factors we're not doing very well on. So the company needs to make those investments to make that happen. And the conversation that we had with the management team at Kashoo was fascinating, because as soon as reports was over there, it opened up this huge can of worms. They were doing things like they weren't even dating the top of the reports correctly. The service of these guys started popping up at this point. So that was interesting. And the whole notion around future product company direction, it was really the fact that they never gave any road mapping to their customers at all. It was just all the communication was either about what we just released in the software, or about the new, the charity fund run they did at the office, or the dress-up day, or whatever, or the newest contest. So there was nothing about where they were headed, and customers wanted to hear that information.
What was with the banking and the bank reconciliation?
The banking reconciliation, some customers didn't like that, but in North America, everybody goes through this. All accounting packages go through the same banking reconciliation back end. So, and it's a business.
I see. So they were using a back end process. Okay. And the clients came back and said that was awful. Okay. Yeah,
that's exactly it, right? And so it did spur a conversation around what else can we do. Technically you couldn't do anything in terms of the core of the reconciliation, but they came up with a whole bunch of sort of crutches around the process that really helped their customers.
So you actually also went in and had a look at so this actually has the ability to also look at the process, or the answers that you got back. It alerted there was an issue with the process.
Yeah, so geez, I forget what we call these things. These are like question sets. So we have one set of dimensions that are general customer experience. So I think there's kind of 9 or 10, and they cover, those are the basic ones that Bob gives in his standard. But we also have
so in your basic
product,
yeah.
And then we have product management questions.
Okay.
We have a set of product management questions and a set of marketing benefit questions. That we use, and the product dimensions. You know, we're running one survey right now for a tax software company, and geez, we must have 20 product dimensions. And we sat down with the product team, and it was kind of like, well, what do you want to know? What do you want to know about it? It's you know, the audit trail that they had in the software and the way the forms open. They just had all these questions about what customers think about sort of these 20 dimensions.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So that's and the same thing happens on the marketing side too. You know, we can quantify marketing benefits. We can get a lot of verbatims out of the customers as well. That's one thing we haven't mentioned, that is that this all comes with a bunch of open-ended text questions and responses that we then sort according to sentiment. So for anybody that's upset, go ahead. Sorry.
Yep. Now, so obviously your basic question sets are quite detailed.
Yeah, well, no, the basic question set. Geez, we'll follow up with a link to a Google Doc, Sam.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can do that.
And then I can also send you the link and then also send you the link for the one that we're just running right now, the tax link as well. But we'll send you the basic one, and what you'll see on the basic one is exactly where we start with any customer.
Okay.
And then
that's what I wanted to see.
On the other one,
that's what I wanted to see.
And on the other one, you'll see where we ended up after we went through a process of figuring out what they needed to know.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to see, because the guys, we all see making the money from the customization part. So if you've got a basic question set that's only going to get them X amount, and they really want to go and get X square, then we need to customize questions to do that. And that's the part that we need to add the value and show them how we can do that. That's just, so yeah, I need to see how all that evolves and how we can actually to deliver all that and so forth. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds
good. I'll follow up with those two things for sure.